Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1320B, and today's date is June 30th, 2017, and the title of the episode is The Hammer is About to Fall. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, as we can see, Obamacare, well, it is imploding on itself, and we're seeing more and more co-ops completely closed down. They are bankrupt. And we've been tracking this for a very long time, and we've been seeing one co-op after another completely collapse. We've been watching the insurance premiums move up and up and up, and we're seeing that more and more individuals, they are dropping Obamacare. Now, Trump is out there, and he's saying that we should just repeal Obamacare at this point in time. And the reason why he's saying this is because as Obamacare implodes, and if we just let it go, well, a lot of people are going to have absolutely no insurance whatsoever. And the implosion, we don't know what the ramifications are going to be when the whole thing completely goes bankrupt. I mean, what happens? Does anyone know? No. So we need to get ahead of this and actually get rid of it. Now, we can see at this point, there's a lot of people that are saying, I'm not going into this. I'd rather take the penalty. By repealing Obamacare, we get rid of that ridiculous penalty, which is really a tax on the people. And I think this is why he's saying, at this point, we need to get rid of this, because he sees that, listen, we only have 4 co-ops left. Those are going to go. Other insurance companies are going to leave the market, and there's going to be less and less people joining up, and the whole thing's just going to go down. And then what do? So instead of just letting it go, we need to be proactive. Now, Trump is out there, and he approved a new oil pipeline to Mexico. He says it's going to go right under the wall. Now, remember, everything that is being done is being set up for this reset of the system. This is why we see all this happening. This is why it doesn't make sense to a lot of people. Why would we be doing this? Well, back in time, back in the 70s, they told us we're coming off the gold standard because of speculators, which was a lie. They told us there were gas shortages. There wasn't enough fuel for everyone. That was a lie. And we could see at this point, they're trying to make it seem like all these things are the wrong things. Just like immigration, that's a wrong thing. Making America first, that's a wrong thing. Because remember, the central banks, the deep state, they don't want America first. They're trying to create a global community where everyone is blended and they have control. It goes against everything they want. Now, we see that the House, they might stall the Senate's Russia sanctions bill. Now, remember, Trump looked at this, and other lawmakers looked at this and said, listen, these sanctions that were created in the Senate, well, it can't be done in the Senate because the revenue part of the bill has to be done in the House. Well, it looks like the U.S. Senate fixed that problem. But the House is out there saying, listen, we might not even pass this. And first of all, they're going on vacation very soon. So it looks like it might be stalled in the House. Now, they wanted to get this bill through before the G20 summit where Trump is going to meet Putin. They wanted to put pressure on Russia. This is why there was such a push to get this out there. And we could see at this point, the deep state, they're still trying to push their agenda. We see the House has passed H.R. 3004, known as Kate's Law, which would impose mandatory minimum sentences on previously removed illegal immigrants who return to the United States and commit a crime. And that bill passed with a vote of 257 to 167. And the Kate's Law enhances penalties for deported felons who return to the U.S. so they aren't free to harm innocent lives. Because what happened with Kate, there was an illegal immigrant that committed murder. Because why? They're not vetted. This was a known felon, and they committed a crime. The House also passed H.R. 3003, known as the No Sanctuary for Criminals Act, which would withhold federal grant money from sanctuary jurisdictions that refuse to comply with federal immigration enforcement requests. So we can see right now there's a lockdown on illegal immigrants, those who commit crimes. We see O'Keefe from Project Veritas. He released another video, and we see at this point that CNN's internal culture, well, it's basically a culture of let's get Trump. Well, it's kind of obvious that this was what it was all about from the beginning. And we understand now that, which we knew from all our investigation of this Russian collusion thing, that all of this is completely fake, phony, and false. And to take this a step further, we see that the New York Times article where they were citing the 17 intelligence agencies that claimed that Russia hacked the U.S. elections, well, it turns out they retracted this. And this is what everyone was pointing to. This is what all these deep staters were looking at, saying, yes, see, 17 U.S. intelligence agencies say that Russia hacked into the Democratic emails, they hacked into the DNC, they hacked the elections. And coming from Robert Parry from Consortium News, the New York Times has finally admitted that one of the favorite Russian gate canards, that all 17 U.S. intelligence agencies concurred on the assessment of Russian hacking of Democratic emails, is completely false. They appended and corrected the June 25th article. Amazing. So think about this for a second. If you were looking up this article online and you were using the fact checkers, they would have said this article is absolutely true. Everything else that everyone else is saying, that is the fake news. Well, once again, it's the opposite. All those people that were saying that this was fake, it turns out that it was. This is why the fact-checking doesn't work. Because who are the fact-checkers? Where are they getting the information? And we know that most of this is run by the intelligence community. Now, Susan Rice is agreeing to testify before the House Intel panel. Now, we know that John Podesta appeared before a closed session of the House Intelligence Committee to offer his thoughts on Russian meddling. Actually, he should have really been in there to discuss maybe pedophiles, maybe to discuss the emails that were released instead of the Russian meddling, because right now there is no Russian meddling. So Susan Rice, behind closed doors, is going to be talking about the unmasking of what she did. And Susan Rice right now has denied that her unmasking of Michael Flynn in numerous foreign intelligence documents was in any way wrong and or intended solely as a means to exact political retribution for an election that went horribly wrong for her party. And of course, this is what they're going to say. But we could see at this point that they were unmasking. This was a crime. Comey even admitted that there were crimes committed, but nobody was investigating. Now, something very odd came out of Eric Holder. He tweeted this, and it's a very ominous warning message that he let out. He said, to the career men and women at the Department of Justice, the FBI, your actions' integrity will be unfairly questioned. Be prepared, be strong, duty, honor, country. Now, why would he say this to the Department of Justice? I mean, one, is it because what's happening with Susan Rice? Because they're starting to talk to these individuals? Is it because of Fast and Furious? Or is the hammer about to fall? Did they get word that now they have proof of what the FBI has been doing, what the Department of Justice has been doing, and all those people that have been left behind? Well, they're going to be questioned on what has been happening and what their involvement was. And it sounds like he is telling everyone that this is coming. Stick to your lies. Don't deviate from our story, and you will be okay. Now, you know, a lot of individuals are going to say, you know something? I can't take it anymore. I'm going to have to tell the truth. Because we could see already that this entire scam, these illegal acts, well, it is closing in on them. And eventually what's going to happen is that certain individuals, they're going to be going to jail. And we can see already that they're getting very nervous about all of this. Now, Russia, they're going to be suspending their payment to the Council of Europe for 2017. The Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, otherwise known as PACE, a supranational organization created to promote freedom, democratic values, and human rights over Europe, well, it has been discrediting itself. Now, according to experts, the organization is under the pressure and is factually managed by the pro-U.S. European bureaucracy. And Russia got wind of this, and they're saying, you know something? We're going to stop our payment to PACE right now. And it's halted its participation in PACE's executive bodies until they do a full investigation of what's really going on in this council. Now, Lavrov is out there, and he is saying that Putin and Trump meeting together live, well, they could overcome the difficulties between Russia and U.S. They can iron everything out, and we can see that the deep state, they don't want this to happen. They've been trying everything. I mean, look, they wanted the sanctions to go through before they even met, but that's not working out. So we need to look at what else they're going to try to gin up to maybe distract from what is going on there. Now, out in Qatar, we can see that Qatar Central Bank said on Friday it would guarantee all exchange transactions for customers inside and outside the country without delay, because the media is out there reporting that some exchange companies have stopped buying the real. But what we're seeing is that is not true. They're saying everything is fine. But what is more interesting about all of this is that Qatar has conducted over 86 billion worth of transactions in Chinese yuan and has signed many agreements with China that encourage further economic cooperation. Now, this is incredibly important because Qatar shares its major natural gas reserves with Iran, and Iran also conducts its related business with the Chinese yuan. They bypass the dollar completely. Now, if Iran, Qatar, Russia, China, and many other countries continue this, well, that means there's no use for the dollar. And we can see over time, as we've been reporting on all of this, that more and more countries are starting to do this. They're starting to bypass the dollar. The question is, why did they decide to do this? Why are they doing this, and why have they been doing it throughout this period of time? Well, we know the reason, because these countries, China, Russia, they understand that the dollar is doomed. The dollar will not be here the way we know it. And they know they have to set up trades, bilateral trades with other countries, and they need to make sure that they're still operational once the dollar ceases to be the reserve currency of the world. And we can see more and more countries are signing on to this, and they're being pushed into that arena. They're being pushed into this arena on purpose. And we can see that at this point that the clock is ticking down. The clock is ticking down, and the deep state, the deep state the central banks had on all these countries, well, it is coming to an end. And we can see it out in the Middle East. They're losing their grip. I mean, think about it. Their whole plan in the Middle East was to have regime change in all these countries, control the oil, put the dollar on the oil, build a pipeline into Europe, to keep the system operational, to keep control over the world until their goal was reached. And people say, well, why would they be doing all this time? Because their goal was to have a one world government. Think about what they've been doing. They've been going from country to country to country, having regime change, putting in a puppet government that allows the private Western central bank into their country, which allows the deep state to control, which allows them to have drug trafficking, which allows them to have human trafficking. And you can see this was their plan. I mean, they were planning to go into Syria, then into Iran, eventually into China, then into Russia. And eventually what they wanted was to control the world. This is their plan. So when we step back and we take a look, what has happened? Well, they're losing control of Libya. Trump wants to have nothing to do with it. Ukraine is a complete mess. Losing control of that. Iraq, well, they don't want the U.S. there anymore. Lebanon, they're taking control of their country. They don't want the U.S. in there. Yemen, the people in Yemen, the Houthis, they're taking back their country. We see China and Russia, their influence throughout Africa, throughout the Middle East. Well, they're gaining traction right now. And in Syria, well, that's completely falling apart. There's going to be no pipeline. There's going to be no march into Iran. Their entire plan is coming down around them. They're never going to have regime change in China. They're not going to have regime change in Russia. And in North Korea, in the Philippines, again, falling apart. The walls are closing in on them right now. And we can see that as we continue on, they're going to be losing everything. And Trump at this point realizes he has control of the narrative over fake news. Think about how he started and where he is today. How many news stories today about Russian collusion, about the Russian hacking, about all this stuff about how the alternative media was part of the Russian propaganda model. And remember, they came out with that list. All that turned out to be completely fake. And the fake news narrative has now switched to CNN with Project Veritas, exposing everything they've done. And while all this was happening, the deep state is being routed out of the government. He's calling them out on all of this. Yes, it's taking time. Yes, in the beginning, it doesn't look like this is what's really happening. The situation in North Korea, even though the corporate media is going to put out the headline, oh, Trump says that North Korea, they can't continue with their horrific act. This is for the press. This is for the deep state. This is for the distraction. Because we know President Moon, we know Trump, they're not going to war with North Korea. It's a no-win situation. It's better to make peace. It's better to make an economic deal, just like China and Russia has been doing. All this stuff that you're seeing, this Saudi deal, this was an Obama deal. That was a distraction to kick off what we're seeing in the Middle East, to have them fighting with each other, to call out where the terrorist groups have originated from, where the deep state is. He's looking at the land here in the U.S. that the past presidents have said, listen, you can't touch this, because there's natural resources that the United States are going to need. Remember, these presidents were putting these lands as, national parks and all these things as collateral for the debt. The manufacturing that he's promising, this is for after the reset. He needs promises from these companies saying, listen, if we get rid of regulations, if we break things down and we make it good for you to come back, will you come back? Yes, we will. But we can't do it right now the way the economy is, the way the regulations are. It's completely impossible. He knows this. The people under him know this. The people that are helping him know this. This is why they're trying to change the economy. This is why they're looking at NAFTA. This is why he canceled the TPP. This is why he needs to get rid of Obamacare. Is the other health insurance plan better? No, because that was made up by the Republicans, by the Senate. Can you just repeal Obamacare? Well, as it's imploding, this is what he wanted to do from the beginning. Repeal it, then look for something different. And of course, we know that Congress wasn't going to go for this. He just couldn't do it on his own. Now that Obamacare is imploding, like he said it was going to be, like we've been tracking it all along, now it's a very good chance to say, listen, it's getting to the point that if we don't do something, a lot of people are going to suffer from Obamacare crashing. And yes, he's saying maybe we can look at the health insurance later on, which I think is a good idea, because why don't we come up with a good plan and leave those lobbyists, those health insurance people out of this? Why don't we come up with a plan that's good for the people? That's where we need to head. So when we start to look at all of this, forget about all the propaganda about him tweeting about what's going on in CNN, MSNBC. This is a distraction for all these propaganda outlets to keep them all busy, to have them argue with each other about ridiculousness while he does the real work behind the scenes. This is what we're seeing right now. And he's doing it a little bit at a time. You don't even know it's happening. Think about how the deep state got our country into this. Did they do it all at once? No, they did it a little bit at a time. Little bit at a time, without anyone noticing, telling us how great it was going to be. Now the opposite is happening. He's unwinding everything a little bit at a time. Distracting everyone else, the corporate media and everyone else, while he unwinds what they've been doing all along. This is not an easy process. It's going to take some time, but he has to do it before the reset. And this is what is happening right now. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.